Chery's showing at the 2026 Beijing Auto Show covered a lot of ground, but the Arrizo X was the one that demanded the most attention from anyone thinking seriously about where the sedan segment is heading. It arrived as a concept, which means certain things about it will change before anything reaches a showroom. But concepts at this level of detail aren't really about the specific car on the stand. They're about signaling intent. And the intent here is pretty clear. Chery is making a serious move toward efficiency-focused engineering, and they're doing it through aerodynamics and hybrid technology, rather than treating electrification as the only answer worth pursuing. The number that immediately defines the Arrizo X is its drag coefficient of 0.196 CD. That's a genuinely remarkable figure for a sedan with any kind of production ambition. It places the car in very select company, and isn't the kind of result you arrive at by making a few cosmetic tweaks. Getting there requires a wholesale rethinking of how the car moves through air, and you can see the evidence of that thinking in basically every surface of the vehicle. The front end is smooth and largely closed off, which cuts down on the turbulence that conventional grille designs tend to create. The body lines don't just look sharp, they're working, channeling airflow along the sides of the car in ways that reduce resistance rather than creating it. Flush door handles, mirrors that have been trimmed down to the minimum functional size, a rear profile that tapers deliberately. None of these are styling choices made in isolation. They're part of a coordinated engineering effort, where design and function have been genuinely integrated, not just aligned after the fact. It's worth being clear about why this matters beyond the headline number. Aerodynamic drag has a direct, measurable impact on fuel economy and driving range, and the effect compounds as speeds increase. For a hybrid or fuel-powered vehicle, shaving this much off the drag coefficient isn't a marginal improvement. It can translate into a meaningful real-world difference in how far you go on a tank or how hard the powertrain has to work at highway speeds. In an era where efficiency targets are tightening and buyers are paying more attention to running costs, that kind of advantage is commercially significant. The Arrizo X is demonstrating that you don't need to go fully electric to push the efficiency envelope in a serious way. Visually, the car introduces what looks like a new design direction for the Arrizo family going forward. It's not aggressive in the way that a lot of performance-oriented concepts tend to be. There's no oversized splitter, no exaggerated aero additions, no attempt to look like it belongs on a track. Instead, it's restrained and considered, with a cleanness that comes across as more confident than cautious. The front has slim lighting elements and a continuous light strip that give it a contemporary identity without shouting about it. The rear carries a full-width light bar that does double duty. It looks modern, and it contributes to the aerodynamic tidiness of the tail. The overall proportions are low and wide, which reinforces the efficiency-driven character of the concept, without making it feel like a science project. There's an argument to be made that this is actually the harder design brief to execute well, making something that looks premium and purposeful while simultaneously meeting extremely demanding aerodynamic requirements. Inside, the cabin has moved firmly in the direction of digitalization. The dashboard is organized around a large integrated display that combines what used to be separate infotainment and instrument cluster functions into a single, unified interface. Physical buttons have been reduced to a minimum, with touch-sensitive surfaces and voice interaction handling most of the control functions. This is a direction the industry has been moving in for a while, but the execution matters enormously. Done poorly, it creates an interior that feels cold and fiddly to use. Done well, it produces something that feels genuinely modern and intuitive. From what's been shown, Chery appears to be aiming for the latter. The materials and finishes on display suggest a step up in premium feel compared to where the Arrizo lineup has historically sat. And the overall layout seems to have been thought about in terms of how people actually use the space, rather than just how it photographs. The broader story behind the Arrizo X is about strategy as much as it is about any specific technology. Chery isn't abandoning electrification. Their EV portfolio has been expanding at a serious pace. But they're also not treating the internal combustion and hybrid path as a dead end that's simply being wound down. The multi-powertrain approach they're pursuing reflects a genuine reading of how global markets actually work, which is considerably messier and more varied than the cleaner narrative of an inevitable electric transition sometimes suggests. Hybrid technology in particular is having a moment of renewed relevance, and not just in markets where EV infrastructure is still developing. The cost and practicality balance that a well-engineered hybrid can offer is attracting renewed attention even in relatively mature EV markets. and automakers who wrote off the technology prematurely are in some cases quietly revisiting that position. The hybrid architectures that the Arrizo X is previewing are described as next generation, and the emphasis is on software-driven energy management, systems that continuously optimize the split between engine and electric motor depending on driving conditions, rather than operating on fixed rules. This kind of intelligent power distribution is where a lot of the remaining efficiency gains in hybrid engineering are going to come from, and it requires the kind of integration between hardware and software that wasn't really feasible until relatively recently. Combined with the aerodynamic work, it points toward upcoming production sedans that should be genuinely competitive on real-world efficiency without making significant compromises on performance or range. For Chery specifically, this strategy makes particular sense given the diversity of markets they operate in. In regions where the charging network is still patchy or where upfront EV costs present a meaningful barrier, being able to offer a highly efficient hybrid or a refined internal combustion option isn't a fallback position. It's a competitive advantage. The flexibility to meet buyers where they actually are, rather than where policy would like them to be, is something that a multi-powertrain strategy enables, and a pure EV focus doesn't. What the Arrizo X ultimately communicates is that Chery is thinking about efficiency as a systems problem, not a powertrain problem. The aerodynamic work, the hybrid integration, the software-driven energy management, the interior digitalization, these aren't separate initiatives that happen to be combined in the same concept. They're facets of a single approach to building a sedan that performs well and uses energy intelligently across a range of real-world conditions. That kind of holistic thinking is frankly harder to execute than simply electrifying an existing platform, and it's the kind of thinking that tends to produce better vehicles. Whether the production cars that follow from this concept fully realize its promises remains to be seen. There's always distance between a show floor concept and what ends up in a dealer inventory, and aerodynamic figures in particular have a habit of climbing slightly once the engineering realities of mass production are fully accounted for. But the direction is established, the intent is clear, and the technical foundations being laid here are substantial enough that even a partial translation to production would represent a significant step forward for the lineup. The Arrizo X stands as a considered argument that the sedan still has meaningful ground to cover, not by chasing electric drivetrains, but by pushing harder on everything else. In a segment that's facing real pressure from multiple directions, that argument deserves to be taken seriously.